So it's Quentin Tarantino. So what type of questions did the interviewer ask Quentin Tarantino?
Well, in this interview, the interviewer asked Quentin Tarantino a range of questions. He mainly focused on like open-ended questions, but he also used a lot of suggestive questions throughout the interview, starting off with asking him about his movie, suggesting that violence is a very dominating part in the movie, and it's kind of like a biased way to ask a question, because he's kind of leaning towards what he wants Tarantino to reply back to him, what he wants the answer to be.
Why do you think he asked these questions?
Why do I think he asked the questions?
Like different types of questions.
I think he asked the different types of questions because he needed to create diversity throughout the interview. He needed to ask a wide range of questions to Tarantino, because obviously it's Quentin Tarantino. It's a big name. He needs to be professional within the interview and ask a wide range of questions from the different styles. So he can generate different responses from Tarantino himself. Yeah.
Okay. So what's the style of the interview? Is it like formal, informal, entertaining?
This interview is more formal. As you can see in the interview, they're both very well dressed. The setting of the interview is quite posh. It's like business conference room kind of thing, and so it kind of sets the formal tone of the interview.
Yeah. So how did you feel when you were watching the interview?
At the beginning of the interview, I felt quite comfortable to watch the interview. It seemed to be going very well. They seemed to be working well off each other as an interviewer and an interviewee. Mm-hmm. But towards kind of the middle and the end, like you said, it started kicking off a bit, and it began to be quite uncomfortable to watch, because you could feel the tension rising between the two, and it was quite cringy to see the interviewer, how he was getting quite flustered with the questions he was asking. Obviously he wasn't like asking them as well as he could, because he's getting quite, uptight about it, and Tarantino wasn't. He was replying back, but you could see he was getting agitated. He wasn't as comfortable as he was before, because he began to get offended.
Yeah. How did you find the structure of the interview? Like, was the interview able to develop from the responses?
Yes, the interview was able to develop from the responses, because this interview was it was the standard interview structure. It started off with an introduction, then went on to obviously the questions, and built up into the longer answer questions, and then came back down again to the outro. Goodbye, thank you for the interview, that sort of thing. So it was kind of a standard structure.
Okay. How did you find the body language from both the interviewer and the interviewee?
Well, the body language at the beginning of the interview, just like the mood, it was more comfortable. They were moving their hands more. They seemed to be more comfortable in each other's company to be able to talk to each other. But then, as the tension started to rise, and as the interview got further, they started to the interviewer started to hold back.
Yeah.
He seemed very nervous to be answering the questions, because you could see, like, he wasn't comfortable asking the questions anymore. He could see how Quentin Tarantino was reacting, and Tarantino was getting very agitated. I mean, he was starting to move about more, because he was trying to get his point across with the movie, and he was getting quite offended with what the interviewer was asking, because it wasn't focused on what he came to do the interview for. He wanted it to be a commercial and a promotion kind of material for his movie, not to be interrogated about all of his movies and how they all have violence in it.
So do you think that Tarantino was like comfortable being in there?
At the beginning, yes, he was, but towards the end, he wasn't. He was getting very agitated, and his responses were reflecting this as well.
Yeah.
He was even offending the interviewer, saying, I'm shutting your ass down, or whatever. He said something like that, because he was asking questions that Tarantino obviously did not want to answer. Yeah. And that's when the mood started to get more uncomfortable.
So obviously, do you think maybe there was some questions that the interviewer shouldn't have asked?
I think that he shouldn't have focused so much on the violence of the movie. Like, this interview was the promotional material for the movie, but yet he focused all of his questions on violence and Tarantino's view on violence and how all of his movies have violence in them.
Yeah.
He never created a massive diversity. Like he used different styles of questions, yes, but they all seem to link back to violence and how Tarantino's movies reflect on this and Tarantino's like views of violence. So it's very repetitive all the time, and so he should have asked different questions like what like, for example, what the idea of the interview was, what the idea of the movie was, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Rather than, you know,
Yeah.
everything about violence.
So there was a purpose of the interview made clear.
No, the purpose of the interview wasn't made clear, because at the beginning the movie wasn't introduced, Quentin Tarantino wasn't introduced, it just went straight in to the interviewer asking Tarantino about violence.
Mm-hmm.
So, the initial like aim and idea of the interview was undetermined. It was unclear from the beginning.
Yeah.
As you got further into the interview, you realised that it was about the film, but
Do you know what film it was?
no.
No. Okay.
Does it say what film it was?
No.
It doesn't. No, I don't know what film it was. So exactly. So it's unclear what the interview is
Yeah.
about.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you very much, Chloe. Thank you.